When a taser is fired, two darts shoot towards you with copper wires connecting them to the gun. And when the darts pierce your skin, it creates a circuit. This causes a battery inside the taser to send electricity through the wires. And when it reaches you, the shock makes your muscles contract uncontrollably, which paralyzes you until the taser is turned off. But if police spray you with tear gas first, it can stick to your clothes. And if they use a taser on you, the electric charge could ignite the gas, causing you to burst into flames. The fire was lit beneath a sealed cauldron, boiling the water inside, and this caused steam to build, which pushed hard against the walls. It traveled up through pipes on the sides and into a metal sphere, and was released out through two curved pipes sticking out in opposite directions of the sphere, forcing it to spin in circles as the steam was released. Now, this was used in Rome just as a trick to impress crowds, centuries before anyone realized it could actually power machines. He thought taking a bath would make him sick, so for over 60 years he refused to wash, saying the dirt kept him healthy. Instead, he left his home and dug a shallow hole to sleep in. He ate only roadkill and smoked animal poop out of a pipe. And instead of cutting his hair, he burned it over a fire. Over the years, he became the dirtiest man in the world, until someone finally convinced him to take a bath, and he died shortly after. They would paint white strips onto the ground, adding darker blocks below it and to the sides. And from the top, it would just look like a weird pattern. But from an approaching car's perspective, it looked like real floating blocks. You see, a lot of cars ignore the crosswalk signs and don't slow down, which can lead to dangerous accidents. So cities around the world have started painting these illusions, forcing drivers to slam their brakes and think twice before they speed. He bet money on when the man would die. If he died within a month, the person in charge would win the money. If he died between 1 and 6 months, the stranger would get the money. And this betting wasn't rare. People across the city gambled on their dying neighbors and even their own family members. Even doctors joined in on the game, seeing how much money they could make. But police started to investigate, and the game eventually stopped. They filled a jar with an oily mix, added a fat wick, then lit it and launched it at enemy ships. Now, this oily mix was called Greek fire, and when it broke on impact, it would spew outward in flaming drops. And these drops would spread across the deck, sticking to wood and rope. The mixture kept burning even on water, so the flames couldn't be put out. Each blob became another patch of fire, spreading across the ship. They pulled chunks of flesh from the mummy, then crushed it into a powder. Next, they added tree sap to create a smooth brown cream. The result was a paint called Mummy Brown, and painters used it for flesh tones, and it became incredibly popular. But when the paint makers ran out of mummies, their supply ran low and lost popularity, and eventually they stopped producing the paint. When artists discovered what it was made out of, they were horrified. One famous painter even buried his tube in the garden, out of respect for the dead, according to the legend. If you sliced open a giant cockroach, squeezed inside, and sealed yourself in, could you survive a deadly nuclear fallout? Well, when a nuke explodes, the radiation travels through the air, but as it passes through different materials, it loses concentration, meaning it will eventually run out. Now, cockroaches are mostly made of water, which would quickly block the radiation, and it would only have to be about the size of a minivan to protect you, but the heat from the explosion would still boil the cockroach's blood, roasting you right inside its body. The mosquito's lip folds back, and 6 thin needles slide out. 2 of them puncture the skin, while 2 more needles with sharp serrated edges spread your skin apart, holding the wound open. Then a 5th needle slides in, finds a blood vessel, pokes into it, and sucks your blood up through the tube. At the same time, a 6th needle drips saliva into the wound, which numbs the area so you don't feel anything until it's too late. When you press down, a hollow metal tube punches through the cherry, removing the hard pit. Then, if you crack the pit open, you'll find an even smaller seed inside. Now, soak a paper towel with water before placing the seed on top, adding a dusting of cinnamon to prevent mold from growing. Then, fold the wet towel over the seed and seal it inside a plastic bag, placing it inside your fridge. And in just about 12 weeks, a tiny root will push out of the seed. Remove the bag and place it inside a pot with dirt, making sure that the root is pointing down. Then cover it with dirt and add a small splash of water. Eventually, a tree will push up through the soil, growing a cherry to start the whole process again. The river would push the gates closed, and the angled doors would seal tight from the pressure, making the water rise on one side as it flowed. Now, if you tried to push the gate open again, the pressure would just make it impossible. But small flaps on the bottom of each gate could be opened, allowing water to flow through. And when the river was the same level on each side, the pressure evened out, meaning you could open the gates easily. Now, this ancient design is still used today in the Panama Canal, creating locks between sections of the canal that have different heights. When boats enter, they can be raised or lowered to the height of the next section before continuing their journey. But since these gates are so big, their weight started to destroy the hinges, which is why they were redesigned to be hollow, allowing them to float. If you jumped through one portal, you would fall out from the other one. And if you put them back to back, it would just feel like you're moving through normal space. But what if you pushed one into the other? Well, the portal has to go somewhere. So, as it enters the second one, the vanishing end would start coming out of itself again and again. And if you were halfway through it as it went in, it would break you apart until you became a jumbled mess of body parts. If you drove fast towards a small lake, could you skip over the water before landing on the other side? Well, when you skip a stone, the speed keeps it on the surface of the water, while the low angle stops it from immediately plopping in. So, if you were driving a car at 50 miles an hour, it would hit the water nose first, making it sink. But if you doubled the speed and added a special fuel tank to increase the engine power, the car could actually skim over the water, bouncing a few times before landing perfectly on the other side. Just one link from the anchor chain weighs about the same as a refrigerator, and the entire thing altogether can weigh as much as a blue whale. Now, you might think the anchor is what keeps the ship still, but if it landed on a hard surface, it would just slide across the seafloor as the ship floated away. You see, the anchor isn't just dropped straight down. They stretch the chain flat for hundreds of feet before letting it curve back up to the ship. And when the waves push, the energy travels up the links, but it's usually not strong enough to pull the whole thing up, so the combined weight of both is actually what keeps your ship floating in place. If a child has a badly curved spine, a doctor might position a metal ring over their head. Then they will insert small pins into their skull, attaching the halo to the child's head. This halo is connected to a pulley system that gently stretches their spine. Over time, the doctor will add more weight, causing the child's bones to straighten. And once they are realigned, they'll perform surgery to lock it in place permanently. Stack the white and dark chocolate bars before chopping them into small pieces, and heat milk in a pot on medium heat. Then stir in cocoa powder and a spoonful of sugar. And when it starts to simmer, dump in the chocolate, mixing until it's evenly spread. After that, add a splash of vanilla and a pinch of salt for a deeper flavor. And once everything's mixed, pour it into a mug topping it off with a candy cane and marshmallows. Finally, blowtorch the marshmallows until they're golden brown to give you the perfect cup of hot chocolate. As they unzipped the bag, they found the spy's dead body inside. Now, the bag was locked from the outside, and the heat in his apartment was on, even though it was summer, which made his body rot faster. But he didn't have any injuries, and his windows and doors were untouched, meaning no one had broken in. Now, police did find DNA on his hand and spent a year chasing a suspect until they realized it belonged to the scientist who forgot to wear his gloves, and the case was closed without any answers. The child fell in an accident, damaging the left side of his brain, and this left him unable to read, write, and even tie his shoes. But his mother soon realized he could sculpt a perfect copy of an animal with just clay and his hands, even after seeing it on screen for only a few seconds. You see, the injury forced the other half of his brain to work extra hard, which boosted his memory and art skills to a superhuman level. Throughout his life, he made hundreds of lifelike animal statues, and he's now considered a genius sculptor. When you check out your groceries, the AI watches you, checking for suspicious movements. And if you try to switch the stickers on different items, the computer will scan its database, making sure the item matches. If it looks like you're stealing, it will alert the workers. Cameras can even track the faces of everyone entering the store, letting employees kick out shoplifters before they can reach aisles. But since it gets things wrong, it could set off the alarm for innocent shoppers, causing a scene and embarrassing you for no reason. His leg was trapped under a log when his owners were away, shriveling up as the days passed. By the time he was brought to the animal hospital, the vet had to cut it off. Now, when a tortoise loses its legs, it can take a long time to learn how to walk again. So the vets 3D printed a tiny wheel and stuck putty right under his shell, gluing the wheel in place. And the tortoise was able to roll around as if nothing ever happened. The wings were attached to the car, and just moments later, it sped forward, lifting into the air. You see, they wanted to make something that could drive to the airport before transforming into a flying car and soaring through the air next to other airplanes. But the wings weren't properly attached, and they also used a big engine that made the car heavier than normal. So a few minutes into the test flight, the wings stopped working and dropped the car from 800 feet in the sky, which killed both inventors and ended their dream of creating a flying car. Water began to pour in from the vents in the elevator, and within seconds, it flooded up to their necks, stopping them from pressing the open button. If they didn't act fast, the water would trap them inside as they slowly drowned. So they stepped onto the railings to keep their heads above the surface, and one person managed to call 911 while another called his roommate. But before rescuers could even arrive, the elevator was almost filled to the ceiling, so the roommate pried the doors open and saved their lives. The ship crashed between two icebergs, throwing the man into a sheet of ice, and he watched as polar bears fed on his crewmates. When one attacked him, he managed to kill it with his knife, but he suddenly realized it had a baby. Out of pity, he raised her as his own, teaching her to fish for him. She even protected him by fighting off other bears, and they lived this way for the next 6 years. Eventually, the man was rescued, but the bear who saved his life was left behind. If you place the boiled egg on top of the bottle with paper burning inside, the fire will heat the air inside the bottle, making it expand, and a little bit will escape, forcing the egg to jump. But once the inside of the bottle cools down again, it will be missing the lost air since the egg is blocking the entrance. This makes the air pressure inside the bottle lower, while the pressure outside is higher, which will start to put force on the egg. And when it gets strong enough, it pushes the egg into the bottle. To get it out, just blow warm air inside to fill the bottle. And when the pressure gets too high, it will push on the egg again, forcing it to pop out in one piece. If you have a lazy eye, you can wear these goggles which show a special version of the game Tetris. Now, your good eye would see only the bricks on the bottom of the screen, while your lazy eye sees only the falling bricks. And this forces your eyes to work together, which strengthens the signals that your brain receives. And by playing for just 1 hour a day for a month, it can actually start to fix your vision. If you bite into a super hot jawbreaker, you might think it would just crack a little and burn your mouth. But jawbreakers are made of layers of sugar, and as the heat moves into the candy, the outer layers cool down as the inside starts to boil. This builds up extreme amounts of pressure inside. So when you bite down, the surface gets cracked and the pressure is released, blasting the molten sugar everywhere and giving you and your friends severe burns. The ravens will circle the injured deer, calling out loudly, and when the wolf hears this, it comes running, attacking the easy prey. Once it's dead, the wolf rips open the carcass, and this signals the ravens to land. They feed on the deer alongside the wolf, but they're not in danger. You see, ravens and wolves have learned to work together. The birds will even use sticks to play tug of war and fetch with the wolf cubs, making friends for life and partners in the hunt. They would spit on the scorpion's tail to temporarily block the poisoned ducks. Then they would throw them into clay pots and seal them inside. As they were moved around, the scorpions would get angry. And some say that when the enemy attacked, the pots would be thrown down the city's walls. The clay smashed on landing, which would release the angry scorpions. And they would sting the enemy soldiers, leaving painful welts, forcing them to give up and retreat from battle. She put super glue onto the top of her tooth before cramming it into her gums. Now, when she was a kid, her mom went to the dentist, where they found tumors growing in her throat, and she died soon after, leaving the woman all alone. Decades later, when her teeth began to fall out from smoking, she was just too scared to go back to the dentist and decided to just glue her teeth back in. But the chemicals in the glue broke down her jawbones, which made more teeth fall out. Eventually, she got the courage to see a dentist, where they gave her a brand new smile. If you buckle a child into a car seat while they're still wearing a thick, puffy jacket, the straps sit on top of all of that padding, and it looks tight and secure, but in a crash, that jacket flattens instantly, turning that hidden padding into extra space the harness can't control. And with all that sudden slack, they can jolt forward far enough for the straps to slip off their shoulders, letting their upper body fly forward with nothing to stop it. So instead of a puffy jacket, use thin layers and buckle the child in first, then put the coat on backwards over the straps, allowing the harness to stay tight against the body and hold the child safely in place during a crash. To get the sculpture inside the eye of a needle, he first uses tiny tools to carve a rough figure, all while looking through a microscope. But as he works, his heartbeat makes the veins in his fingers pulse, and even the slightest movement can ruin a piece. So he only works in between heartbeats. Next, he refines the shape until it's perfect, and to paint it, he plucks out a single eyelash and attaches it to a tiny handle, then uses this as a brush. For tiny ships, he uses spider webs in place of ropes, and files the bottom of the needle to make it rough, before sticking the finished piece inside, making these some of the smallest handmade sculptures in the world. When the ant finds food, it oozes out chemicals through its abdomen, leaving a trail that tells the other ones where to go. And after the other ants ate, they would add their own chemicals on their way back, which would strengthen the scent, attracting more ants. Now, if the leader ant accidentally circled back to the middle of the trail, the other ants would start joining, reinforcing the circle while the original path slowly disappeared. And with no exit, they would march for hours until every single one died from exhaustion. If you were stranded on an island, you could shave your head bald and exfoliate your skin with a cloth before using oil to make it extra shiny. Then you could tilt your head in different directions, and as the sunlight hit it, the smooth surface would act like a mirror, turning the light into a bright flash that could alert any nearby planes. Now, you might think you could reflect the sunlight onto a single spot to start a fire, but the top of your head is curved, which spreads light around. So even if you try for a long time, you'll probably just end up burning your scalp instead. He received a mysterious letter in the mail promising free tickets to a football game. Thousands of people in the area got the same letter, offering seats to a game, food, and even a shot at winning Super Bowl tickets. And all they had to do was show up at a convention center for a meal before the game. So, over 100 people lined up at the doors, while cheerleaders and mascots greeted them. The people were led in groups to the auditorium, but once they were in, the doors locked. Then tactical teams stormed in, taking the whole group down at once. You see, those letters hadn't gone to random fans. They were sent to wanted fugitives. The cheerleaders, ushers, and mascots were all U.S. Marshals and police officers, and in one afternoon, over 100 felons were arrested. They dressed the dead body in a soldier's uniform and slipped a fake identity card in his pocket, along with a photo of a woman who was supposed to be his fiancée. Then they handcuffed a briefcase to his wrist, and inside was a top-secret letter outlining the military's plan to invade Greece. You see, Allied forces wanted to attack the Nazis in Sicily, but they knew it would be a bloody battle. So they used this homeless man's body to create a fake officer, then dumped him in the ocean near Spain. When the body was found, the fake letter outlining the attack on Greece found its way to Hitler. He believed it was real, causing him to ignore Sicily. He sent 90,000 soldiers to Greece, expecting the Allies to attack. Meanwhile, the real invasion happened in Sicily and was easily won thanks to the fake officer. They would shoot at the airship as it flew overhead, and each bullet contained a tiny copper tube filled with dynamite. When it was fired, the high speeds caused the explosives to separate, leaving the most sensitive part at the tip of the bullet. Hitting the airship would then trigger an explosion in the bullet, and because the airship was filled with flammable gas, the exploding bullet would cause the whole thing to burst into flames, putting an end to the enemy crew before it could bomb them. The bird spits a thin strand of saliva onto the rock. Then it adds another, building it up layer by layer. As the saliva dries, it forms a hard cup-shaped nest. Harvesters remove these nests from the cave walls and clean it until it's pure white. When the nest is cooked, it melts into a thick soup that people eat, believing that it helps their skin look healthier. And because each nest takes weeks for a single bird to build, they sell for thousands of dollars per pound, making these spit nests one of the most valuable foods in the world. They gave a baby a rat to play with, but then struck a steel bar behind him, making him cry. They did it again, and every time the rat appeared, the noise followed. You see, the scientists were training the baby's brain to connect the rat with the loud, scary sound. And after a while, just seeing the rat made him cry. This also caused him to fear other white objects and things with fur. This showed the researchers that fear could be taught, but the baby left the hospital before their study was finished, meaning they never got the chance to undo the fear they had created. Rest the bottom stick between the nook of your thumb and your ring finger, gripping it lightly to keep it still. Next, hold the other one like a paintbrush, using your thumb, index, and middle finger for ultimate precision. When you move your fingers up, the top stick tilts open, while your thumb acts as a hinge. At the same time, tension between your thumb and ring finger keep the bottom one in place. And when you bring your fingers down again, you can lightly grip the food before popping it into your mouth. But if you try to also move the bottom stick, the tendons in your ring finger would be too weak to control it, meaning you could end up dropping your food. She escaped her abusive boyfriend, taking her puppy with her to a hotel. But since she worked 12-hour days, the puppy got bored and chewed through the pipes. When the hotel manager found out, he told her to get rid of the puppy or they would both be kicked out. With no other option, she called an Uber to the vet, planning to get the dog put down. But when the driver found out, she called her husband, and they both agreed to adopt the puppy instead, saving his life and giving him the home he deserved. The letter arrived just days after they bought the home, and at first it seemed to be a welcome to the neighborhood. But as the man kept reading, the hairs on his neck stood up. "Do you know what lies inside the walls?" the letter asked. It was signed by the Watcher, who claimed to have observed the house for decades. And now this person was watching the new owners and their 3 children. Over the next few weeks, more letters arrived, telling the couple that if the children played in the basement, no one would hear them scream. It also said they would be watching the family through the windows, but despite security systems, police, and private detectives on the case, the Watcher was never found. After 6 months of terror, the family finally put the house up for sale and left. If you get it just right, it'll pull on the bolt slightly. Next, use a pick to lift each of the levers inside until you feel one slip into place. Now, if you do this for each of the levers on a normal lock, you'll push all of them into the right position, allowing the bolt to slide open. But this particular lock has an extra piece of metal, meaning if you push one of the levers too far, it locks everything in place. And even the real key can't open it. This tells the owner that someone was trying to break in. Instead, they have to turn the key the wrong way to release the metal bar before they can open the lock. He shaved the head, then began to tattoo a message directly onto his servant's scalp. After that, he rubbed a special paint into the wounds to color it. He then waited until his hair grew out completely, covering the tattoo. The servant was then sent to his allies, who shaved his head again, revealing the hidden message about the plans to rebel. He wrote, "I am awake" in his journal, and just a few seconds later, he wrote it again. Each time he felt like he was waking up for the very first time. You see, when he was in his 40s, a virus had attacked the part of his brain that saves facts and memories, causing his mind to reset every 5 to 30 seconds. He could still pour a cup of coffee, but he would forget it was sitting right in front of him. When he met a new person, he would greet them again just a few seconds later, as if it was for the first time. Now, he could still sit down at a piano and play beautifully. That's because he still remembered all the skills he learned before he got sick. And the virus didn't damage his emotional memory, so every time his wife walked into the room, he hugged her with tears, because to him, it always felt like they had been apart for years. He found the injured fish on the ocean floor, and instead of letting it die, he fed it crabs every day. He gave it gentle kisses on its head as it slowly recovered. When it finally healed, the man watched it swim away, thinking this was his goodbye. But the next day, he noticed a familiar shape coming closer. Seconds passed as they looked at each other. Then the fish rushed over, bumping itself against his hand so he could pet it. 30 years later, whenever he goes down to dive, the fish is still there to greet his old friend. As As he chatted with the stranger, two people carrying a door walked between them, blocking his view. The stranger quickly swapped places with someone else. The new person picked up the conversation as if nothing changed, and the man didn't even notice. And 7 out of 15 people never realized they were talking to a completely different person. In another test, people watched someone leave money on a table and walk out. Then another person came in, stole the money, and left. But as she turned a corner, a different woman took her place. Barely anyone noticed it was a different person, and about 25% of them identified the wrong woman in a lineup, proving just how unreliable our memories can be. They designed this fire truck to have 2 heads, one in the front and one in the back. You see, years earlier, a big rig caught fire in the middle of a 7-mile-long tunnel. This quickly caused a traffic jam, blocking fire trucks from entering, and the blaze lasted over 2 days, killing 39 people and injuring 11 others. To stop this from happening again, the 2-headed fire truck was invented. 2 drivers control it from either cabin, allowing it to drive in either direction without reversing. It can even crab walk through traffic, meaning it can enter tight spaces and put out fires before it's too late.
চুপ একদম চুপ 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 একদম চুপ ওর প্রেমে তো মায়া পড়বই পড়বো মায়ের মা পড়তো আমার দুটি কথা বলছি তো মামা দূরে দূরে থাকে কাঁচায় ধরা দেয় না বাবা আপনি মহান বাবা
আচ্ছা আপনার কি মনে হয় না যে আপনি যাকে ভালোবাসেন আপনি যে মেয়েটাকে এত ভালোবাসেন
আমি তোর ভাবির বাসার সামনে তুই তাড়াতাড়ি লাগা দে তাবিজে লাগা দে
আপনাদের তো চিনলাম না আমার বড় বোনের যে দেবরগুলো আছেন তো সবাইকেই চিনি বাট আপনাদেরকে তো চিনি না
যাইতে দে আর আমার খালা লাগে কোথায় বলতা ভালোবাসা যে এত প্যারা এত কষ্ট এত জ্বালা যন্ত্রণা জানলে ভালোই বাসতাম জিসান আর তুলির ভালোবাসার ইতিহাস তাই রক্ত লাগবে
আসসালামু আলাইকুম দুলা ভাই
আরে শালা ওয়ালাইকুম আসসালাম কি খবর কেমন আছো
তো গলায় দড়ি লাগাই দিছে ভাবি
গলায় দড়ি দিছি মানে গলায় 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 কেন রেখেছেন আমাকে আপনি এখানে শুয়ে আছেন কেন চাই গুড ভেরি গুড এনে তো চা তোকে এরকম উদ্ভ্রান্তের মতো লাগছে কেন জি
সুন্দর
এই যায়
থ্যাংক ইউ
আমাদের শহর কেমন লাগছে
এখনো বুঝে উঠতে পারিনি
আমি যেন সেই কাজ করি ভালো মনে
আমি শুভ, এখানে নতুন এসেছি।
টুম্পা তোর সাথে কথা বলবে।
কেন আমি বিরক্ত করলে তোমার সমস্যা না? আর 5 জন এসে বিরক্ত করে তাতে
জাফর আমার এক্স হাজবেন্ড।
শেষ পর্যন্ত তোমার বুদ্ধি হলো, যাক এটা ভালো।
না না
কবিতা লিখতে হইব, কয় লাইন লেখছস দে, নাহলে কিন্তু আমি তোকে পিটামু দে। তাদের
লাগতে হইব না ভাই, এটা স্যার আপনি যেটা করবেন এটা করবো। কনফার্ম করে আমি করে কিন্তু কবিতা লিখতে পারবো না।
কোনো মাপ নাই।
এটা পড়ে আপনার প্রেমে পুরো রূপ করে পড়ে যাবো।
আর তোর
আপনি পারবেন ভাই, আপনি পারবেন।
এত কিছু ফালানোর সিস্টেম জানোস, আর প্রেমে ফালানোর সিস্টেম জানোস না? কথা তো একেবারে ফালায় দেওয়ার মতো না। আগে যদি তোরা গুলিও করস, আগে সালামটা তুই আনো।
আপনার ছেলেকে আমার এত পছন্দ হয়েছে যে আমি তো বিয়েতে রাজি হয়ে গেছি।
বছরও পড়বো না।
আমি তোমাকে চ্যালেঞ্জ দিলাম, তুমি যদি 7
মাস্তানি মুস্তানি অপরাধ, এই 7 দিন খালি খাবি। আর
এরকম পট্টি দিয়ে রাখছস কেন?
আমি চাই এই মহৎ কাজটার সাথে আপনি থাকেন। আমাদেরকে একশো
দুনিয়ার খাসা বেড়া। হ্যাঁ, আরে বেড়া বড় ভাইয়ের মতো একটা বড় ভাই মানে থুকুর
কিন্তু ছাপাই না, সব মাথার ভিতরে থাকে। যখন পড়তে ইচ্ছা করে মাথা, আমি জানো ওরে বাপ করে দেব। আর আমি কি কমো জানো? তবু তানিয়া ভালো কেমনে বেটা, কস না কেন, বেটা
তোমার আমি আসো ফুল দাও দে আচর করে বুঝতেছ।
গর্জন করলেই সবকিছু অর্জন হয় না, বুঝছস?
জানি না শুধু ভাত কেন?